Michael. Michael is an 11-year-old boy on the autism spectrum. He's in the 5th grade and has a low intellectual ability according to an IQ assessment. He's in a special class at school that is designed for students on the autism spectrum. Michael can speak, but he speaks using scripting that he has heard from his favorite TV show, Thomas the Train, often in narrative form with a variety of intonations and voice impressions. So for example, if you ask him why he is upset, he will tell you, using a British accent, that Percy feels put upon, and sing, put upon, Percy feels put upon. Because this makes it difficult for Michael's parents and teachers to understand what he's really trying to communicate, and because they don't believe that Thomas the Train is developmentally appropriate, they are teaching him to use an iPad with picture symbols to communicate his wants and needs. But he requires an adult to help him when he uses this device. Michael enjoys math the most, particularly content that involves numbers and operations, measurement, and patterns. He does get frustrated, though, during math class when they implement the scripted Common Core math modules. When Michael becomes frustrated or agitated, he slaps his ears, screaming. At school, he will often scream, "I must go home now," and becomes aggressive towards adults and other students if they approach him. Michael has many self-imposed dietary restrictions and will only eat certain types and brands of food, such as spaghetti made with ragu sauce only. When his parents have tried to introduce unfamiliar food or spaghetti that is made with another sauce, he will become upset, slap his ears, and push his food to the floor. Homework requires a great deal of support between Michael's teachers and his parents, including monthly meetings and daily emails. Michael's parents have visual checklists for every routine in their home. Bedtime can take over an hour for Michael to go through his routine of jumping on the trampoline, doing a 10-minute session of yoga, washing his face, brushing his teeth, and writing his numbers. It takes him a while to fall asleep, but once he's sleeping, he will stay sleeping all night long. However, if they do not go through this routine in the exact same way every single night, it can take them over 2 hours to get Michael to go to bed. Michael loves taking things apart, like clocks, computers, TVs, and thermostats. Both Michael's parents and teachers have come back into the room to find him sitting in the midst of these dismantled devices, examining them. Although Michael is a unique human being with his own unique fingerprint, this is a typical story of an individual on the autism spectrum. After hearing about him, you might be wondering, what is the outcome for a child like Michael? Will he ever be able to live independently? What kind of job could he ever be capable of having? Is he intelligent enough to even have a job? Is he capable of being in a relationship with another human being? What possible asset could Michael bring to our community?
Some stories about autism emphasize social difficulty. And it's true. Individuals on the autism spectrum have social differences. They may talk for too long in a conversation or not know when to ask a question. They may have difficulty picking up on subtle cues and changes of voice or facial expression. They may struggle to make friends or keep them. This story also emphasizes that individuals on the autism spectrum have behavioral challenges. They may have fixated interests, engage in repetitive routines or rituals, and have unusual responses to sensory stimuli. You may have heard this story. We also hear stories about autism in the media. These stories often focus on causes or cures for autism, and they rarely include the voices of individuals on the autism spectrum. These stories emphasize that autism is mysterious or something that may need to be fixed or eliminated. We are inundated with images of individuals who are struggling, individuals engaging in explosive or challenging behaviors, and individuals who lack emotion. We may hear stories about autism from self-proclaimed experts who lack scientific evidence to back up their claims. We may hear stories about individuals on the autism spectrum who have overcome great obstacles to achieve normalcy, or whose strengths are so unbelievable that we have difficulty connecting with them as human beings. We can hear about good Samaritans who give someone with autism a chance by taking them to the prom, or offering them a job, or letting them play on a sports team. How do these stories shape our beliefs and perceptions about autism? Are their voices missing? Could we think about this in a different way? What if we considered Michael's story in another way?
What if we saw Michael's scripting as a strength in memory and the power to connect language with emotion, revealing his ability to use symbolic language, recognizing that his scripting is valid communication about his feelings, being open to this idea so that we can decipher that Percy feels put upon means that Michael is feeling overwhelmed. Seeing this as communication versus a repetitive behavior that needs to be extinguished.
What if we saw Michael's prompted use of the iPad as the beginning in his important repertoire of technology skills? And what if we saw this as a strength to allow him to connect with his community through technology and form relationships and connections?
What if we saw the bedtime routine as strategies that he has learned to self-regulate? That his consistent repetition of this routine allows him to independently self-manage his need to decompress and wind down before he goes to sleep? What if we taught him to access these strategies throughout the day, to decompress when he is feeling overwhelmed, so that he has an alternative for aggressive behaviors?
What if we saw Michael's reliance on visual supports and schedules as an important employment prerequisite skill? And what if, instead of trying to fade these prompts, we taught Michael to access them and utilize them across many contexts in many settings to build and promote his independence?
What if we noticed Michael's strengths in memory skills, his gift of distinguishing patterns and things, his ability with numbers and procedures, and his complex understanding of how to take things apart and reconstruct them? And what if we saw these as assets in a number of employment settings, like electrical and mechanical engineering, or computer repair, or manufacturing, and nurtured these skills instead of preventing Michael from engaging in them? Constructing learning experiences to develop Michael's employment skills while also educating our local business partners about autism and employment-based supports, showing them the assets that a person like Michael brings to the workplace.
What if we allowed ourselves to see the strength in the raw human emotions that Michael demonstrates and the love and unconditional acceptance he has in his family? What if we allowed ourselves to see the authentic human nature of autism?
If we did this, could we see autism as a means of pulling us out of this box of normalcy, seeing the beauty and strength in differences in thinking and behaving? Would we be able to channel those strengths and highlight them as assets? After all, seeing a thermostat from the inside offers a different perspective than seeing it from the outside.
How do we do this? It's not only about flipping the story, but it's also about listening to individuals on the autism spectrum. Listening as they tell us what they need and what they don't like, and recognizing that autism is a complex spectrum of differences in thinking, behaving, and communicating. We also need to listen to families and understand that there are many barriers that make autism very difficult for families. Not judging families when they can't rejoice in the autism diagnosis and acknowledging that they may be mourning the loss of a dream they had for their child. Families are dealing with complex medical, social, and safety issues. We need to hear families when they tell us that they are exhausted because they spent the night sleeping outside of their son's room so that he wouldn't wander. We need to acknowledge this, but we also need to consider that it may not be autism that's the problem. This may be only one part of the story. It may be that families are faced with many incomplete stories about autism.
And what about professionals that are supporting individuals on the autism spectrum? Yes, they need to understand what evidence-based practices and supports are. They need to know how to design and implement curricula for diverse learners. But they also need to know how to advocate for funding, to be focused on improving life outcomes for individuals on the autism spectrum, educating others about the assets that individuals on the autism spectrum bring to our communities, and advocating for the removal of barriers that prevent individuals from achieving their full potential. They need to also realize that Michael is the expert on Michael. Listening to him as he tells them what is working and what is not working. Using his interests and embedding them into his activities so that he can experience some joy, something we all have a right to experience at some point throughout the day. They need to embrace Michael as a diverse human being, seeing his possibilities, including everything he is right now, transforming their own perceptions on autism and deconstructing these inaccurate paradigms about the autistic potential. They need to be able to flip the story.
How are we helping professionals to flip the story? Our interdisciplinary program takes students across a variety of disciplines, including education, speech-language pathology, creative arts therapy, and several others. We bring these students together, provide them with many family and community-based experiences so they can develop an understanding of how to support families and individuals on the autism spectrum, while also deepening their own knowledge in their discipline-specific area of expertise. We acknowledge that the voices of individuals with autism are an important source of information as professionals as we learn how to support those in our community.
So how are you going to flip the story? Some of you may have a family member on the autism spectrum. Some of you may work with individuals on the autism spectrum as teachers or therapists. Some of you may call yourself autistic. Some of you may have only heard about autism through the media or from us today. Are you willing to consider different perspectives on autism? Are you willing to listen to the voices of individuals on the autism spectrum when they tell you that they are not a puzzle to be solved, but rather they embrace the infinity symbol as a representation of the autistic community? Think about what you can do to transform perceptions of autism in our community. We hope that we've given you an opportunity today to consider how you might do this. Thank you.